Welcome to Module 12 of the Fearless Farm Finances webinar series. In Module 12, we're going to cover partial budgets. So in Module 11, we just covered enterprise budgets. So moving from enterprise budgets to partial budgets. Partial budgets, a tool for comparisons. We'll cover what is a partial budget and how it can be useful, what goes into a partial budget. One of the considerations with partial budgets is expanding your production. We'll look at comparing production methods with partial budgets, and then look at labor-saving equipment using partial budgets. So what is a partial budget? Partial budget is an analysis tool that lets you analyze a portion of your farming business to see if adjustments to your operation should be made. So at any given point in time or any given year, you always have some questions around certain enterprises or certain pieces of an enterprise in your farming operation. And that's when a use of a partial budget would be helpful. Some questions you might ask are, should I add an enterprise? Should I be changing production practices? Should I custom hire or purchase the equipment? What about adding a milking parlor or a packing shed? Would those help my business? Partial budget could help answer a change in market outlets. Could also help you answer the question, should I purchase my transplants or should I grow my own? There are several methods to organize partial budgets. One way is to separate the projected changes into the positive and negative financial effects, and I'll give you an example of this in a couple slides to come. Know that in a partial budget, not all decisions will be based solely on economics. Some could be based off of quality of life, safety for animals, people, and environmental considerations. And I'm sure there's other considerations that you're going to find on your own farm that a partial budget could be useful. So what's the difference or the variation from a partial budget from an enterprise budget? So like I said, in the previous module, we covered enterprise budgets. What's the difference? Partial budgets are often used to evaluate the impact of a proposed change that has not been tried on your operation. So you actually will not have your own farm numbers. So remember, in enterprise budgets, we really stressed using your own farm's numbers to make decisions. In partial budgets, you might not have your own numbers. So where do you get the numbers? We'll answer that. Similar to enterprise budgets, do you have a neighboring farm that has already done it that could share maybe some of their numbers? Going to extension publications, research publications, other financial experts might also be able to point you in the direction to get you some numbers, especially just for partial budgets. Partial budgets will not include all the costs of producing a product. You'll only look at what change is going to happen. So what is the change between your two choices? And look at those numbers. If ownership costs are not affected, they actually will not even be included. Success of a partial budget is dependent upon the accuracy of your estimates. So just remember that you might want to actually ask for a few different sources or a few different farms' numbers to get a range of numbers that then you can use. Use your farm numbers for base comparison and then gather the alternative consideration numbers as close to the actual as you can get. And know that once you make the change, or let's say the change looks good, you're going to make it, the numbers will never be the same as what you actually estimated, but hopefully you can get close. And then, like I just previously mentioned, use a range of estimates to know what is the risk of this proposed change, and is it a pretty likelihood that you'll succeed, or does it carry some question marks or some iffiness to it? There are 7 components of a partial budget. So one, you're going to look at any increased revenue 2, reduce cost. 3, reduced revenue. 4, increase cost. 5, the total of positive effects. So if you're going to increase revenue and reduce costs. 6, the opposite, total of negative effects, reduce in revenue and increase in cost. And then 7, the net change, all of the positives minus the negative effects. This is an example from the book. So in this particular example, they're looking at changing crops. So they want to know, they're growing specialty green beans right now, and they're looking at going to salad greens. So you'll notice on the left-hand side are all the positive effects of changing. So there's going to be some increase in revenue from the sales of salad greens. There's going to be some decrease in costs. On the right-hand side, there's actually going to be some negative effects as well. So there's going to be decrease in revenue. So if they were to not grow the green beans, they're going to lose revenue, and increase in some cost. So you'll see the total positive effects and the total negative effects with a net change of $6, a negative $6.37. So like I said, you can use this for anything on your farm, but for this example, you'll notice the total negative effects outweigh the total positive effects by that $6.37 per bed, indicating the change from growing specialty green beans to salad greens would actually reduce this particular farm's profit. So this one doesn't make sense, but the non-economic considerations such as labor, so note that in this example, the specialty green beans need 15.45 more hours per bed than the salad greens. So, and you might have thought that about that before would be the deciding factor, and the change actually isn't worth it. So, like I said, weighing out the positive and negative effects for a total net change can be really helpful and not that time consuming to do. Another reason you might want to quick look at a partial budget is if you want to expand your production. So, in this particular table, let's assume your farm produces vegetables on 4 feet by 100 feet beds, and you've developed enterprise budgets for 4 of the 5 crops that provide the majority of income on your farm. So currently you're producing carrots in 2 rows down the length of the bed, and you wondered what would happen if you could put a 3rd row of carrots in there. So you estimate that actually adding the 3rd row of carrots could increase your production by 75 pounds. So you'll notice on the positive effects, increase in income, we add that line. Given your current sales price of 80 cents per pound, that means revenue would increase $60 per bed. However, let's look on the opposite side, on the negative side. Seed, other crop inputs, and labor are estimated to also increase $21.50 per bed. So the total positive effects of $60 per bed still outweigh the increase in negative effects of the $21.50 per bed, leaving us with an increase in profit of $38.50 per bed. So if you feel there are no other significant non-economic factors involved, you would probably likely determine that you would grow a 3rd row of carrots in the same bed, and it would be easy and profitable to implement. Also assuming that you have a market that wants more carrots, that you're not already overproducing those, and that you've considered all of your systems in your production that make growing that 3rd row of carrots possible. Another reason or another way you might look and use a partial budget is comparing production methods. So this is a 3rd example of how you could use partial budgets in helping you make decisions when you're comparing 2 different types of production methods. So in this particular example in front of you, you're going to compare growing your own bedding plant transplants to purchasing them from someone else. So if you purchase transplants, you would no longer need to purchase the soil mix, seed, and other supplies necessary to grow your own transplants. So that's a positive effect. You would also not be providing labor to grow the transplants. So for simplicity, in this particular example, no building or equipment costs are included, although if the decision was being made on a larger scale, they would need to be considered. So, and then moving to the right on the negative side, in this particular example, you would be purchasing 100 transplants at $1.50 each. So your actual cost would depend on what type of transplants you were purchasing, as well as the size of your purchase order. So sometimes larger purchase orders normally have lower prices per unit, so you could play around with some of those pieces. So based on this particular example and based on a transplant cost of $1.50 each, it would actually not make economic sense for you to purchase the transplants because you would end up paying $133 more than if you were to grow them yourself. The fourth example of how partial budgets can be used in decision making looks at purchasing a new piece of equipment. So for this particular example, and this example is in the book on page 163, they're going to look at, this particular farm is going to look at a decision that focuses on the cost of the equipment versus the cost of labor that is saved by the equipment. So they're wondering, does it make sense to purchase a one-row potato harvester versus continuing to pick the potatoes or dig the potatoes and harvest them by hand? You have 1 acre of potatoes to harvest each year. So if you lay it out, positive effects on the left-hand side and negative effects on the right-hand side, the potato harvester would be able to harvest 1 acre in about 2 hours versus paying laborers for 100 hours to pick the same acre of potatoes. At $12 per hour, using the harvester, your labor cost is $24. Paying $12 per hour, you would no longer have $1,200 per acre of hand labor costs if you were to purchase the potato harvester and use it. Notice that we didn't include the cost of the potato harvester itself into this partial budget. The price you pay for the potato harvester was $2,000. The estimated life of this piece of equipment for accounting purposes is 7 years. So the term for accounting purposes is important because that is how you'll determine the depreciation cost of the equipment. And if you remember back to our discussion on the module with balance sheets, depreciation costs for the equipment is the sale price minus the salvage value, or the price you could sell the piece of equipment for at the end of the 7-year period, divided by the useful life of the equipment. So for this particular example, we're going to say $2,000 is the purchase minus $0 for the salvage life in 7 years. So 2,000 minus 0 divided by 7 equals $286. So we're going to use the annual depreciation cost of $268, and that's how we got that on the second line in the negative effects on this partial budget. In addition to depreciation costs, you're also going to have additional fixed and variable costs associated with your potato harvester. So the fixed costs, those that don't vary by usage, would include the taxes, storage, and insurance. It's estimated the fixed costs are 1% of the purchase price, or $20 per year. The variable costs, those that increase or decrease with usage, would be repairs and maintenance. So the variable costs are estimated at 2% of the purchase price, or $40 per year. Your actual fixed and variable costs can differ substantially from these estimates from year to year, and so that's where when we encourage you to ask other producers or go online and look for the ranges in these, that could be helpful in just getting your numbers to a better point that then you can make a decision with. Keeping good records on repair and maintenance, as well as fixed costs such as insurance and buildings, will also allow you to be more accurate in when estimating these costs for your particular farm. So the total cost associated with the potato harvest purchase and use would be $370 per year for the 1 acre of potatoes. That's a net change so the net change would be positive. So you'll notice on that very bottom line on the left-hand side, a positive $830, indicating you would increase your farm's profitability by replacing the hand labor that you had done on potatoes with the potato harvester. And we don't even talk about physical savings on you and your labor's back. This is just on the financial side of it. So this is a short module, but in summary, partial budgets allow you to compare two alternatives side by side to determine which alternative would increase farm profit. Remember that a partial budget does not tell you whether either one of your options is the best alternative available. You're just comparing. So you might have to do 3 or 4 different partial budgets and see what one comes to the top after you compare 1 and 1. It also tells you which one is comparatively better financially than the other. So remember there again, on all of these that we gave you examples for was the financial component. And then, like I said, you're not going to get away from me saying garbage in equals garbage out. Poor input numbers could lead to a wrong conclusion. So let's say you do partial budgets and you make some conclusion. Make sure you keep your numbers and records accurately so then you can come back and do an actual partial budget with real numbers the following year to see if you are close and on track. So coming from enterprise budgets to partial budgets, all of it can be useful. So good luck with all of those components to help really your decision-making process. This module is part of the Fearless Farm Finances, and you can find all of the modules in the link in the middle of your screen. We want to thank the USDA National Institute of Food and Agricultural Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program, who awarded the grant to make these possible.